Hey, everybody. I am so excited today to welcome Christian Boucousis. Did I pronounce that right? All right, there we go.
Nailed
Uh,
it.
to Leaderships today. I'm so excited to have him because you have got to go check out his website. We'll talk more about that later, but the man is so accomplished and done so many incredible things. So I'm just really in awe of being here with him today. He is the CEO of Afterburner, a former Australian fighter pilot, and someone who's taken that high performance mindset far beyond the cockpit and into building and scaling multiple high growth, multi-million dollar businesses. His journey hasn't been without challenge. I mean, what good journey isn't? He was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder and forced to rethink everything, and that shift became a part of what actually fuels his work today. He is a human behaviorist specialist, a strategist, a keynote speaker who goes beyond just high performing teams. He helps leaders unlock a whole new way of thinking about performance, resilience. We need resilience today, don't we? And what's actually possible. His latest work around Human 2.0 is all about evolving how we think, how we can show up stronger, more adaptable, and ready for whatever comes around. And I won't spoil it for him. I'll let him tell you about his Afterburner Advantage book a little bit later because I'm extremely excited to dig into that soon myself. So, if you're ever wondered what it really takes to truly level up your mindset and performance, you are going to love meeting Boo. So, let's get your cup, get your sips. Welcome, Boo, to Leaderships. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to
Mm,
sip coffee and talk about leadership, two of my favorite things.
I love it. Well, I just scratched the surface of just who you are, what you do, very, very high level, but would love just to hear more about your experience from fighter pilot to what you're doing today. If you could just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Oh gosh, there's an old saying, that the thing fighter pilots like to do the most is talk about themselves. So, thank you for that opportunity. Uh, yeah, look, I have just really leaned right into life, I guess. Probably more as a function of being an ADHD type of personality, which I was diagnosed with about 3 years ago. But I think, for me, when it comes to talking about leadership, it sort of comes from a perspective of doing it
Mm,
rather than theorizing it. What I realized is I'm just about to release another book, and it's more core philosophies around leadership. That when I look back on my life, just how many steps along the way was geared towards leadership. I joined the Air Force straight from high school. So from the age of 19, you're straight into officer training school, spending 13 weeks to kind of learn the skill of being a leader. And
wow.
being in the Air Force, it's very much leadership driven. And as I look at, I guess, defining leadership, there's a huge element of it, which is just personal leadership, just leading yourself. And I don't think you can lead others until you kind of tick that box. So I'm in this phase in life, I'm 51, where the last sort of 10 years, I mean, I was running pretty hard up to the age of 40. I was fighter pilot, was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis. I was kicked out, had to make a life change. So I started a business in Afghanistan, built that business up to be quite a substantial business, and then came back to Australia, moved into property development, built a hotel, got into publishing, came across this Afterburner thing where fighter pilots are on stage talking about how to get things done, how to build strategy. I thought it was a bit corny, and then I went and watched one and had this moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, this is really cool. And then I realized that the success I had in business, I could attribute not to the flying part of being a fighter pilot, but to the cognitive training, the way in which they teach you to adapt your behaviors to any environment, where they assess you based on your hunger to learn and your commitment to growth. They don't use any of those words, but when you reflect on it, that's what the environment is. Because there's just very few careers where every day you sit in the cockpit with another pilot behind you that's teaching you and assessing you for an hour and a half. You cannot hide anywhere. Every number is visible, every direction, every degree. It's absolute under the microscope stuff. And you do that for 2.5 years of
Wow.
just being under the microscope to the
That's
point where you
that's a lot of pressure.
yeah, but it is. But you kind of you get used to it and you start to, when
Mhm.
you don't have it, you start to miss it a little bit because I think what happens is when you're under that sort of pressure and it's linked to something that you really, really want,
Mhm.
you really get a lot of performance out of an individual. You really tap like the humans probably operate at about 30. This is a boo statistic, by the way. No research to support this whatsoever. But just through observation, I think people operate about 30% of their full potential. You can
Mhm.
get to 50% pretty easy, 70% with a bit of effort, but when you get to the 90%, you're right on the peak stress curve there. And I think the Air Force is very good at getting you there. So, most of my life was spent not really being very philosophical or very reflective. It was just like build businesses, build, grow, make money. Um, and then, funnily enough, you get to a point in life and you go, oh, this money doesn't actually make you happy. And once the business has been built and it's now just generating sustainable revenues, it gets a little bit boring. So I would sell them and start again. So I kind of have this habitual start all over again kind of philosophy. But now, in the last sort of 5 or 6 years, I'm just kind of deconstructing it all. Just, what on earth did I make a decision one day to move from the comfort of Sydney, Australia, to go and live in a pensione in the middle of Afghanistan and live on potatoes, coriander, and tomato for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because I didn't have a dollar to rub together,
Oof.
and then build a massive company and then sell it and start all over again and risk it all. So you got to go back and go, dude, what were you doing? What were you thinking? Um, but been a wonderful journey. Uh, it's been a journey where you get very comfortable with people saying no, uh, and very comfortable with being uncomfortable. And there's a young guy called Scott Eames. He's wrote a book about discomfort, and he talks about life is full of discomfort, but you need to make a choice. The discomfort that comes with growth, the discomfort that comes with growing, or the discomfort that comes with stagnation. And I think that's really cool because I've done both. I've had the discomfort of growing businesses, and then I've sold them, and I've had the discomfort of kind of semi-retirement and being bored. Uh, so I think humans we're incredibly complex and very conflicted in ourselves as to what we want. And I think when we talk about balance, I think what we really talk about there is it's not so much balance as equilibrium. You need peaks and you need troughs, and they need to be about the same. If you just kind of flatline and plateau, it's kind of a banal existence.
Yeah, wow. I mean, you've had an amazing background. I can't imagine going and starting a business in Afghanistan. I don't know. Maybe that's a first world problem that I'm like, wow, how did you do that? That's amazing. But what I love what you said too, it reminded me of a quote that John C. Maxwell always says is the hardest person to lead is you. Like
Yeah.
ourselves, it literally is the hardest person to lead. And when I hear your story of, building up and doing something different and keep moving and you're comfortable in the discomfort, I can't help but think about the people I see at work, or especially a lot of the Gen Z and the younger generation coming in the workforce, and they are not comfortable with discomfort. And I feel like resilience is something that's just not, I don't know. And maybe I'll be 50 next week, so we're close in age. Maybe it's the Generation X in me that's like, hey, that's life. You're uncomfortable. There's always going to be change, and you have to figure out ways to navigate through it. So, how do you see, or do you see like these younger generations, just young in their careers, entering the workforce, that maybe are struggling with that a bit, but yet the world is going a mile a minute, constant change, AI, everything going on. And how can they build resilience? Like how can they get comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Yeah, I think there's a challenge there. You can't be resilient. You earn resilience. Like it's not something you
Mm.
can just be. Like
Can you put that on a mug? Because that's amazing. I love that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm like, I want that on a mug. I love that. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
that's
think
awesome.
I have like my grandmother died last year. She was 99, but for 3 years there, my family spanned 5 generations from the age of 2 to the age of 99.
Wow.
And we were talking about it in the lounge one day with my grandma, and she was, with it all the way up to when she was 99. She was very intelligent, very accomplished woman. And, we're just talking about the difference because even she was saying, in the last sort of 10 years, she'd noticed that the world had just stopped caring. Like she said, you just feel like no one cares, no one's listening, and everyone's in it for themselves. Whereas she sort of spoke about her life during the war, World War II, and then afterwards when she lived in Malaysia and Singapore and she was in the hotel industry, that everyone pulled together. Like there was just always this sense of community. And I think a big part of resilience is community because it's much easier to do hard things if you've got support. Now we're quite isolated, I think, with the ability to just get lost by yourself in a digital vortex, and really experience dopamine, which is meant to be a reward for doing difficult things. So there's no real motivation to do the difficult thing. Like I remember at school, right? Like it always felt good after doing the hard stuff.
Mm.
And that's why you did the hard stuff. Whereas now you can just feel good. And then you've got society in general. I mean, if you think of everything since World War II, every business idea, everything is about making people more comfortable, about making life easier. You don't even have, even getting kids to go to a supermarket and buy ingredients for a meal is like, ugh, because it
True.
requires effort.
Mm.
Uh, so I don't have an answer. I just think the world isn't as resilient. There's nothing you can actually do about it. But I think the way the world's going is towards some cataclysmic kind of scenario where people are going to start earning resilience a little bit. I'm always really fascinated with the whole, I guess, the makeup of a human being from the primal amygdala-driven structures of the brain where, there's aggression and emotion all the way up to the, higher planes of intellectual process. And I just feel we're reverting back to more of the primal side of human beings, more of the animal side. We're less patient, we're more aggressive. I make a point of when I walk around this. I used to live in Miami, so I used to make a point of when I went out for a run or a walk every day to say hello to everybody. And I would say
Mm.
1 out of 20 would say hello back. Like you're from
I'm
the city.
sure. Yeah.
Um, Different in Park City, there is no one when you go running. Because I don't get to practice it so much. But I think when you've got nothing to worry about, which is kind of the world these days, you tend to worry about everything. Everything, every minor thing becomes a reason for concern. If you look at our parents, their main concern was buying a home, getting their kids through school and to college to set them up for a good career. Now, and they didn't have a lot of resources. Like you didn't get a lot of stuff. Whereas now, I want a bike, you get a bike. I want some rollerblades, you get some rollerblades. I want. This kind of gap between desire, expectation, and reality is too small. Um,
Yeah.
so, I think as we move forward and we just look at the geopolitics and the way the world's going, I feel like, it's going to bite back soon. And we
Yeah.
go, we get back to survival of the fittest. I mean, you know, it's not
So,
very touchy-feely and it's not very,
no.
it's not very soft talk, but I believe that humanity for 100,000 years was built as a resilient entity, and it's not like that anymore because we've kind of almost reached peak human.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I appreciate you summarizing it that way because it really, I think, builds a good analogy for, I mean, as the years trudge on, as I get older, you see more full circle moments, right? I feel like, oh, humanity, here we go again. It's like reboots in Hollywood, constantly reboots or live action or whatever. We just keep remaking things over and over again. And I wonder, is the creativity gone? Like, where's all that going? But I think what you hit on is so key too. I think I mean, it's our generation and younger. It's like we're raising people in comfort as opposed to character, because that's what I think builds good leaders is when you do have to go through adversity. And sadly, going through COVID and going through so many different things that have happened in recent years and continue to happen, I feel like that's what should be either it's going to bring out your best of yourself or the worst of yourself. And unfortunately, I think to your point, brings out the worst in the sense of I'm always seeking comfort as opposed to how can I lead myself and others through this in a way where we're going to be stronger together. We're going to come together. We're going to move forward together. We're going to learn from this and then hopefully move on. It's like we're not learning our lessons anymore.
Yeah, and I think
Uh,
just the basics, you don't need to work very hard for the basics. I mean, you can
mhm.
like my kids could just when I got a job out of high school, it was hard. It was
Yeah.
challenging. It was competitive. Now you're like literally got 10 jobs to choose from. It's we have all of this abundance, right? Uh,
Yeah.
so I think, you know, and with my family, we try and build scarcity in just for the sake of it, and to particularly our little one, our 4-year-old, it's like just learn to wait for stuff, and also learn to be bored. Just I don't, oh, I'm bored. Good. Just be bored. And it's incredible, when they go from being busy to bored, you sort of hear him in the back room talking to himself, playing little games, his imagination's running wild, and spends 2 hours just in his playroom just playing make-believe. Um, yeah, I was reading a few weeks ago that in the United States, the graduating class of 2025 was the first year that the average academic um, capacity of a graduate was lower than the generation before. So every generation has progressively
Wow.
got more intelligent, and we've,
Mhm.
for the first time, gone backwards.
Yikes.
So yeah,
Mm.
and digital. I mean, don't get me started. I think that the digital world is just
Oh, yeah. Well, it's ruined critical thinking. I mean, and again, I'm in digital media. I should be like, oh, I love it. But we're terrible as humans. We're terrible about balance. Like I think to your point earlier, it's like we are not good at that. If you use things like AI or use social media or use those things as a tool, it's fine, but in moderation, not comparison culture, not driving, like living on devices and screens. It's ruining your brain. There's so much research and science out there, and it's like people need to get out there and touch grass, you know? It's like
yeah.
I remember, yeah, when I was a kid, I mean, we didn't have any of this, but you did use your imagination. You did get creative. And I feel like that helped us learn how to be resourceful people as adults now. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people. It's like they feel so defeated when they can't figure out one thing in one way. It's like, no, let's talk about all the different ways, or what can we do different, or look at it from a different point of view. And I feel like that critical thinking is something that we are definitely losing for sure.
Yeah, but the good news is there's a cure to it all, and because really, if you're a good leader, you can fix a lot of these problems. Critical thinking is actually a very easy skill if you understand how critical thinking works. And critical
Mm,
thinking, there's 4 steps to it. That's all there is. One is the intention, like what are you trying to achieve? Two is measuring it against reality. Three is having conversations where we embrace curiosity and just wonder, hey, this is interesting. We're not there yet. Wonder why. And then the final step is the micro actions and habits that you take to get there. You do so you fly about 420, 430 missions to become a fighter pilot. Every one of them is just incrementally more difficult than the one before, not excessively, it's almost the perfect balance of if you have a comfort zone, you're right on the fringe. You're not over it and you're not too far inside it. And then every time you do that mission, your comfort zone just gets a little bit more, a
mm,
little bit wider, a little bit wider, a little bit wider. And I think there's this wonderful opportunity for leaders. If they know how to critical think, then they can do it a little bit more. And it's a really fun way to lead because you're always talking about moving forward. And that to me is what leadership's about. It's about taking people into the unknown. That's your job. And then secondly, growing them along the way so they can become you in the future. Uh, but so many leaders get bogged down in the past. It's
mm.
about what did you do? Why is this done wrong? Do this, do that. Uh, and leadership's become more like that because the space to think and create and be patient with people has been stolen by the notification tsunami that we have now in any business.
So
And
true.
it's
So true.
and it's a reinforcing loop. Um,
Mm,
the less thinking you do, the more reactive you are, the more busy activity you create. So it ends up being like a vicious cycle.
mhm.
In my new book, I've defined this idea of the perfection death spiral. And basically, it's within all of us, we have this subliminal narrative to achieve. As humans, we only know achievement as win or lose. Therefore, if we're not winning, we're not doing a good job, which means we have to be perfect. Because if there's any win or lose, that's binary, perfect or not perfect. So the challenge is when you start looking at it in terms of how the spiral works is people who are leaders who are trying to achieve an impossible benchmark slowly start to exert more control because there's this sense of if I can control it, I can do it. And it's as simple as oh, I've got to fix a problem with the client. If I just do it, if I just email them and just fix it instead of the person that has to, then it's fixed, and I'm get closer to that perfect outcome. But obviously, what happens is if you're a leader and you start to control 10 or 20 people's worth of activities, is you very quickly become overwhelmed. And as you become overwhelmed, the perfect solution falls further and further out of view. You start to be late, over budget, everything's a problem. So what happens then? Well, if I just control even more, I'll get back to where I was, and then we create more overwhelm, and then the bottom of the spiral is burnout. You crash. Uh, and I think that a lot of leaders suffer this. I was just on another podcast just before and talking to a leadership coach, and she was sort of saying how the leaders that she's coaching, they just can't get away from this urgency thing where it's just like, I've got so much to do on it. And it's like, okay, stop, think. Oh, I can't stop and think. I've got too much. I've got to get everything done. This is so important. Okay. Who says this? Who is telling you it's all important? No, realistically, oh, my boss says it's important. Are they saying it's important or are they just reacting as well? They react. Cool. So slow the whole thing down. Get together. Co-create. Discover what good looks like for all of us. Everyone cut up the pizza pie, eat your piece of pizza instead of everyone flinging pizza across at each other, half eaten, and mine's cold, and I ordered another two pizzas. Oh, we're over budget. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
literally finding the space to think today in the digital world is valuable. I heard it referred to the cognitive economy. Like now we're starting to put a dollar value on the ability to think. Because if we don't think, like, if we were all apes, we wouldn't have got to where we were in society, right? Somewhere in there, we were doing some pretty deep thinking and some pretty critical processing of information to create what we have today. And now it feels like we're on the precipice of going backwards a little bit.
Yeah, I'm completely agree. I love what you're saying about I think more leaders do need to think that way because that is a vicious spiral, the reacting to the sense of urgency. And also, I think people make up arbitrary deadlines too. Like sometimes I feel like I've tried to teach my team just ask when they need it by. Is this really urgent? Is this something like, and then sometimes you get, oh, I don't need it till next week. But because of who asked for it, and there's an assumption on your part that I've got to drop everything and do, as opposed to pausing and actually taking that time to, think and actually deliver something even better if you would just ask some more questions too.
Yeah, it's fascinating because so I was 48, I was diagnosed with ADHD because my son was struggling at school, so I had to do a test to see if he had ADHD, and mine was like 99.6% on the self-assess scales, off the charts. So the last 3 years, I've been reading a lot about ADHD, and what you start to learn is when you go in on ADHD, it's like it's just an amplified version of what everyone has. Everyone has a form of paying attention to the right thing at the right time. And one thing I learned that was quite fascinating and explains a lot, I think, about the challenges of leadership is humans can only process time in terms of now and later. That's about it. Like they don't know, no one can really define how much I can get done in an hour. No one really knows what takes a day. It's like, yeah, well, we're quoting a new website build and they're telling me, oh, it's going to be this many hours. And I'm like, how do you know that? Like, how do you know it's going to be 10 hours? Like, it's not going to be 10 hours. It's going to be like two. I was like, no, we're good. So explain, but and no one can explain to you what the per hour investment is. So people get uncomfortable because that's how I think. I'm like, cool. I'm a fighter pilot. We always think in seconds, minutes, and hours. We don't think in terms of days and weeks. Explain what 10 hours of work looks like. What are you doing in the first hour? I'm like, I can't pay. I can't pay for 10 hours worth of work for you to spend 7 hours figuring it out because you're distracted and then finally get around to it in the last three hours. Like I'm not. You got to define what it looks like.
Valid question. It's a valid question.
Yeah. So I think what happens is, whenever in any endeavor in life or in business, we're very good at starting things and understanding that if I'll start this here and I'll start that there and and we spend a lot of time, it's called the planning fallacy. It's a cognitive bias where we effectively, oh, look, I've planned it. So we get a sense of achievement just from the plan. But no one ever focuses on the finishing, what finishing looks like. I know that I have to start it now, but you can actually define finishing with as much clarity as starting. And I call it destination driven leadership. And I got this idea because that's, again, how fighter pilots work. We don't go to work each day and go, hey, I've got a bunch of airplanes. Where do you want me to go? It's we come to work and we're like, there's a target. Let's work backwards from the target. So we actually start everything with what it looks like at the end and then work backwards. That investment in time as a leader of a team is a force multiplier. When everyone is invested in what it looks like when it's finished, you don't have to worry about being busy because everyone can't, most people are smart. They're just dumbed down because they can't exercise free thought because they're just reacting all the time. But that co-creation of the destination where you must arrive by a certain time is really powerful in unlocking the full potential of a team. So yeah, and whenever you get something new as a leader, you have to ask yourself, is this new thing going to get me to my destination? And if not, is it that important? Or am I just here because I'm busy and people just give me stuff and I just do it? And therefore, what they're really doing is giving me their work rather than doing it themselves. Uh, but
Yeah.
again, it all requires stopping and thinking. It requires taking a breath, stepping back, asking yourself, what am I trying to achieve rather than what do I need to do?
Mhm. That's awesome. What do you say though to leaders that like is there something they can do to get in that headspace and really see that? Because there's so many leaders out there that just want to do it all themselves, just want to take it, get territorial. Maybe it's insecurity, maybe it's what, like, how do you break them of that? Or how do you show them that this is a better way?
You can't. I mean, that's the sad thing. Like
Mm,
you can be, you can. The way that we do it is we just find the 2 or 3% that are kind of programmed this way, and we give them the tool set to scale it. So again, it's not like when you're a fighter pilot, you do some deep psychology degree and understand how cognitive behavioral therapy and iterative learning works. Like that doesn't
that's
happen.
fair. That's fair.
You,
Yeah.
you just have a system and you
Mhm.
operate in the system or you leave. Um,
Mm,
so leaders that understand it's important to problem solve, that are more thoughtful, that's where we start. And
mm,
through them, we coach them into this model of how you be an inquiry-based leader rather than a directive leader. Like your job as a leader is to create the destination. It's not to direct people there. They can get there by themselves. Um, so there's a lot of little nuances there. We we engineered like a 90-day program. So once a week, we connect with leaders as a team, like so they have the peer group insight of their perceptions and the way that they think and work. And we coach them to start to call each other out. And we have a philosophy that if you're going to have a meeting, you're not allowed to ask for an update. You have to know what's going on before the meeting. And in the meeting, you're only talking about moving forward. You're only talking about tomorrow or the next day. Because realistically, if you need to meet to update, all that highlights is you've jumped into an airplane, you're flying around somewhere, and you're like constantly asking, where are we? Where are we? Where are we? Whereas if someone just said, hey, this is where we're going, you can just ask, are we there yet? Uh,
mm.
yeah. So
Yeah, like
it's,
another meeting that could have been an email type thing, right? It's like,
yeah, I use another
yeah.
analogy. It's like the glass plasma balls that they have at museums. It's just like a big glass sphere, and the electricity, probably got them at Disney, bounces around everywhere, and then you put your fingers on it, and the electricity goes to
Mm,
your fingers. I, to me, that's what the brain is. It's a ball of electricity. So if you put 10 fingers on a plasma ball, you get this insipid piece of electricity bouncing everywhere. If you put one finger on the plasma ball and you just get this one strong piece of electricity, yeah, that's the equivalent of a neural pathway. So if you just focus on doing three things a day and you do the first thing, then the second thing, then the third thing, not three at a time, what you do is you create this really powerful neural energy. People call it flow state, deep work, and everything becomes easier and faster. You know, we're doing a massive AI transformation in the business at the moment, and I know that I can just if I just sit for 3 hours, that I can you build the connective tissue with all the connecting parts. If you just do it for 15 minutes and you're looking on your phone every 5 minutes, you never get to the connective tissue between all the moving pieces. So the brain is very powerful, but it's a little bit, more like a tornado than a laser beam. Like we put all that energy and create chaos and destruction as we go through our lives and we react to our partners. And you said that, and I said this, and no one says, "Hang on, let's put all the tornado's energy down a straight line and ask ourselves, hey, what does good look like at the end?" Because here's a simple way of uh, leading a much lower stress life as a leader is just about everything that goes wrong in a business or anything that as an emotional response is the byproduct of an unmet expectation. That's what it is. So there's two things you can fix: meet the expectation or reset the expectation. And human nature is to set expectations that are unachievable and to underestimate the effort it takes to get there. I probably just said the same thing there, but anyway. So what
I
happens
understand.
is we
Yeah.
constantly live in a world of unmet expectation.
Mm.
Yeah, one of the best bit of advice is like I ever got, for my relationship was look at your partner the same way you feel about yourself. Like they're human, like you're human. The negative talk that you have, the confusion you feel, the stuff you can't explain about why it is, exactly the same things going on in that other person. Uh, it's the other analogy is like you're driving your car and someone cuts you off, and it's like you're an idiot. You don't know how to drive, but they're just distracted. Like they didn't even know you were there. They're not an
Yeah.
idiot. They're just a human being that made a very human mistake. Uh, but we just cannot see the world that way. We just cannot look at other humans as if they make just as many mistakes as you do. And it's quite bizarre if you think about it. Like, how can we not look onto others the way we look onto ourselves?
I know. It is wild, right? I can't tell you how many times I've mentioned to people on my team or I mentor, it's like that person did not wake up this morning thinking, how could they ruin your day? I
No.
promise you. People are too selfish for that, right?
Yeah.
But we do act like people are out to get it. I mean, there's probably like 1% of, there's some, evil people in the world that might do something, but 99% of the time, to your point, it's like people are just in their own world doing their own thing. Not, the person that's cutting you off thinks, oh, I just got over because I'm on the way to the grocery store and I got to go quick or whatever. And yeah, we don't have a lot of empathy, I think, for putting ourselves in the position of others. It's like kind of like you don't have to teach a kid how to say, no and mine and, have that so selfish tendencies, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny. I was just having that conversation on the weekend because there's a bunch of 4 or 5 year olds all playing together, and I was just commenting to my partner. It's like, we're we're even mean at the age of 4. Like there's a
Right.
meanness to us. There is a selfishness that is like fundamentally human nature, and I
Yeah.
get it because that's the survival, that's the
Sure.
survival instinct. If I have everything and I look after me, I'm going to survive. So and again, I think that's where we're going, as a
Yeah.
society at the moment. Um, you realize that civility and the goodness that we show to each other as human beings is something that requires effort. Like you've got to put in. It's
Mhm.
not, I think that's, you know,
Yeah, you have to be highly intentional,
yeah,
right? To be
intentional.
kind and yeah.
Yeah, you have to, and I've always made that decision in my life to always be grateful for someone at the checkout at the supermarket, to always show gratitude to a waiter, to you know, be kind to an Uber driver. Like just always, like I said, just walk through the streets and look at someone walking past you
Mhm.
in the eye and say, "Hello, how's your day?" Um,
Yeah.
but I tell you, that's not what everyone does. That's
No, I know. I was brought up in Southern California. I know that too well, sadly. There's
yeah.
a very, I mean, in some places there just is a more, feels like a more inherently selfish culture, which is too bad. But I agree. I think we're not, we're born with some innate survival in mine and me and with them, right? What's in it for me. But as leaders, it really should be the opposite, right? Like in
Yeah.
terms of having, being intentional to be a service to others and to grow others. And I think that's the hardest part about leadership is just checking your motives.
But it's also the irony of selflessness. Like selflessness is actually a gift you give yourself. I think
Mm.
if the more that you give out, the universe kind of looks after you and the more it returns. I mean, you know, I kind of think of my life and yeah, I'm always in pain. So my condition is always I go to the gym, the gym, who enjoys going to the gym, right? But I got to do it because it keeps me healthy. And then because of my medical condition, it hurts for 24 hours because it inflames my body. So, and then what you realize, I must have had a very deep weekend conversation with my wife because I'm about to say, oh, I was talking about this on the weekend, and I was. Uh, you just start to not feel pain anymore. You just you normalize more and more and more until it's like, okay, well, look, it just is what it is. It hurts, but keep going. Um, and to go back on the entire narrative to my grandmother here, when we were talking about, because I had some friends there, my Air Force friends that I've known for years, and they were asking her like, "What's the secret?" Like, because they love my grandmother. They've known my grandma for 30 years.
Mm.
Um, and she's just said, look, you just got to get on with it. Like that's it. You just get on, just keep going. Uh, and she was kind and generous and giving. She just for her getting on with it was just like literally 1 year before she passed away. She was coming back to her car. She was still carrying her own groceries, still driving at the age of 98, and there was someone was trying to steal a car.
Oh,
And instead of panicking, she just walked up to the car and just said to there's a guy in his mid-20s. She said, "You don't need to do this. You don't need to do this. This doesn't need to be your life." And he burst into tears and sat in the car for an hour having a conversation, and he came to her funeral.
wow.
You know,
Wow. I'm sorry, that is a beautiful story. First of all, it take so much courage for her to do that, but that's legacy right there. That's amazing.
yeah,
Wow.
but you think of how most people would frame that situation, right? You would
Mm-hmm.
be immediate, "Hey, call police. Ah, you're a crook.
Mm-hmm.
You're yelling, screaming, and the temperature would have gone up on both sides. Someone could have got hurt." But she saw into his soul and
Mm-hmm.
she understood that, of course, he wouldn't want to be this person. Of course, why
Mm-hmm.
would anyone want a life of crime if you didn't have to have one? So something's gone on there. And and that's what a leader is. She was a leader. She was one of the first general managers for Hilton Hotels. She ran the Peninsula Hotel in Hong Kong. She was a great leader because she could see into the soul of the people. Any bad behavior, she knew no one wants to be that. No one wants to be that. There's a reason for it, and she would go straight to the reason. What's upsetting you so much? And I
Mm-hmm.
just think I struggle with that. I don't have the patience, but I just think that's a remarkable way to be as a human.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that it's like she invented empathy. It's
Yeah,
hard, right? I mean, it's a hard thing to have and do. And like you said, I mean, I think we resort immediately to the what's in it for me, what about me, in our own lenses, our own filters, our own. But I love that your grandma leaned into like under trying to understand and got curious about the other person. I mean, she was doing that before it was cool, like nowadays. I think that's
yeah.
amazing. That's
But I think
awesome.
also, you know, I think we're in this world of we don't really understand what empathy is. you don't need to be empathetic to somebody if they're struggling at work because they're not putting in the effort. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the default is to, oh, are you okay? Like to demonstrate empathy. And it's like, look, this isn't the standard.
Right.
Let's work together here and I'll help you. Like what? And that's that same four-step question. It's like, look, what do you think? What do you think the expectation is here? How do you think it's going? What are you struggling with? And why don't you and I work together to help you get not a PIP or a or some like documented performance report, just a freaking conversation. Just a conversation that shows that you care. And I work with a lot of leaders, and inevitably it comes up with these conversations. Oh, he always does that. She's always does that. He's an idiot. And I'm like, well, hang on a minute. Like you, you this person, are we 100% sure that this person truly understands what you want to achieve and what their role is in doing that? And you you tell me what the expectation is. And I'm like, you can't even tell me. Like, if you can't tell me what your expectations are, and then you're like punishing and you're labeling somebody for underperformance, it's your fault. It's on you. They're
Yep. Well
they're just
said.
in survival mode. They're just throwing darts without a board because you haven't built a bullseye. And that one issue to me, that destination, is without doubt the biggest reason why organizations s- struggle with engagement, why they're always late, things are why leaders are so overwhelmed and so controlling. Because the reality is no one actually knows what good looks like at the end. They just know you got to do a whole bunch of work and get started now. Two different conversations.
I totally agree. Yeah, where it's just whatever's rolling downhill at the moment, right? The reactionary thing that we were talking about earlier. I feel like that is such a spiral. And well, you hit on something too that I see way too often, where it's like this sink or swim kind of mentality of leadership. It's like the people who come in brand new, have no idea about the culture, have no idea about the job, and then the leaders are like, good luck with that. They're not coaching them, they're not teaching them, they're not giving them, to your point, a target. And to go towards what does success really actually look like? And it's like, oh, they're just not getting it. And then
Yeah.
the rare few that might seem to like engage, but it's so exhausting and hard. And then you burn out your higher performers anyway because you're still not operating in that way.
Yeah,
Boy,
well, it all goes back
wow,
into survival mode. So everyone just,
it's true.
if you build an environment of scarcity, everyone's going to look after themselves because no one knows if they're going to have their job next year, and then everything becomes political and I've got something on you and you've got something on me. So we're going to stay in this business relationship because we've got dirt on each other rather than because we're
Yeah.
uplifting each other. We're moving into a positive future. Um, but there's a lot of research around the negativity bias. Like as a survival instinct, our mental autopilot programs us to be negative because that's the safest way to think. I mean, if everyone had the same appetite for risk as the cast of Jackass, no one, the human race would fade out. So you have to have both. So again, to be an impactful leader is to understand that everything around you and how it feels and how it works ultimately comes down to you. Because when you start with that conversation, at least you can remove that variable and then say, okay, well, it's not me, so maybe it is this. But the easiest thing to do as a leader is to blame shift. Uh, you know, uh, we have the attention span of a goldfish now, right? So a leader thinks, hey, we had a meeting on this. We spent an hour talking about it, and everyone on there's got an 8 second attention span. You didn't meet, you just made noise for an hour together. Uh, no one can process an hour's worth of information in today's world because most of the conversations fail to inject the intention. Like the intention of this meeting is to deliver on our intention. It's more like I have to be seen in this meeting to be working hard and putting an effort, or I'm going to get fired. And
Oh. Optics, it's called.
Microsoft's kind of workplace survey in 2024, assessed employee engagement, and it dropped another 2% from 23 to 21%. I mean, you think of that, 80% of people working aren't interested in it. And we wonder why
Wild.
it's not working.
Yeah, it's wild.
You don't
Well,
need a leadership hack. You
no.
don't, nothing magic's going to come out and help you with that. There's no engagement because you are not engaging with them. It's
Yeah.
not your people's job to engage with you as a leader. It's your job to engage with them. That's why you get paid more money. That's why you were selected for a leadership role. The reality was you were promoted to become a leader because you were good at your job. You weren't good with people. And now all of a sudden you run 10 people that are doing your job. Oh, by the way, none of them as good as you because you're the one that got promoted. So now how are you going to look at everybody? Everyone's hopeless. Why can't they do this? This is easy. And you get frustrated and you take over and you control and the perfection death spiral kicks in again. There is no business doesn't invest in leadership development. It just doesn't. It just invests in bite chunks of stuff. Well, let's do something on empathy. Let's do something on critical conversations. Let's do something on employee engagement. And it's like it's kind of easy. Care for people, co-create where you're going with your team, and bring intentional reflection into your practice. Engage them through the art of problem solving, and all of you start to focus on what needs to be achieved rather than building insane to-do lists that never get done.
Beautifully put, Boo. Thank you so much for sharing that. It is really simple at the end of the day, but yet somehow so complicated that so many people don't do it. I think just they get in their own way. You've used so many great analogies today. I know going back to your Air Force days. Tell us about your book. I would love to hear more about your book and, like a little teaser about what else is in there because this has been just amazing. All the models and analogies and things I know the listeners are taking notes. At least you better or play this back and make sure you're writing some of this down. But I would love to hear more about your book and like what inspired you to write it too.
Yeah, I think um, so. The Afterburner Advantage, which I published last year, is kind of a 30-year backstory on the company that I acquired, and really what we've learned over 30 years working with 3,500 companies and 2 million leaders,
Wow.
and what works and what doesn't. It's I like the book because as a fighter pilot, it's a to-do book. It's like follow these steps, do this, it works. It's not a story book. Uh, so the next book is a storybook.
Yeah.
So the flawless leadership is more, your traditional atomic habitsy kind of 4-day work week, philosophical kind of leadership book. Um, there's a selfish reason and a selfless reason. The selfish reason is because I have ADHD and doing this stuff is hard. I want to prove to myself and my kids and my family that there's no excuses. It's
Mm.
just hard. It's not difficult. It's just hard work. So that's why I wanted to write this book. Um, and then the selfless reason is everything in the book works, not
Mm.
as a
Nice.
theory. It's all real. It's either real fighter pilot stuff, real in my own businesses, or real in terms of the companies that we work with that bought into the process and had quite astonishing results. And it's not complex. It's just uncomfortable. So it's trying to help people get curious about this whole idea of you can't be perfect, but you can be flawless. And the flawless leader is the leader who takes people into the unknown, who grows them along the way. They invest 100% in what they can control, and then they adapt intelligently to the things that they can't.
That's
That's the
brilliant.
model to
Mm.
be transition from a life of overwhelm into a life of impact.
Oh, that's amazing. I have to admit, when I first read Flawless Leadership, I was thinking, is there any such thing? But the way you explained it, it's the process, the flawless process, not expecting perfectionism. That's beautiful. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I use an analogy in the book because for me, there's a real nuance in the difference because everyone assumes flawless is perfect. But if you look at a diamond, You can be flawless. It can have no occlusions. It can be uh, perfect clarity. In what it can control, it can be perfect. It can be flawless. However, the minute you turn it into jewelry, it can no longer be perfect because the jeweler has to cut it, can't make a mistake. You have to catch it in the right light. And the person that buys it or observes it, it has to be to their taste. So all of a sudden, this flawless diamond can become very imperfect. That's the difference between flawless, 100% investment into what you can control, and perfection, giving up on trying to control everything that you can't and adapting to it.
Well said. Well, I can't wait to read it. Thank you so much, Boo, for being here today, sharing, dropping so much wisdom and knowledge, and really excited that we had this conversation. But before I let you go, because I want to be, what are you sipping? What's your favorite sip?
Well, I can't get my favorite sip in the US. It's a
Oh,
flat white is what I would drink about seven of a day in Australia. So now I'm a good old fashioned drip coffee guy. Black,
nice.
raw. I fill the filter bag as much as humanly possible with coffee. To me, coffee just has to taste like coffee. I can't put any sweetener in it. I can't put any cream. Just I don't know, man's coffee, I guess. And I learned that in Afghanistan because there's you had no options. You just had to drink the black stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know Starbucks does a flat white, but I doubt it tastes the same
They
for
don't do a
way.
flat white. They do
Yeah.
something called a flat white,
Oh,
but
got it.
it is
Not the same.
yeah. There's an art to the Australian flat white.
Oh, well, visiting Australia is definitely on my bucket list. So one day I'll have to get there. I do like black coffee though. Didn't used to. When I was in college, I started with I call them the gateway coffees of like mochas and sweet. And then over time, I just don't like sweet in the coffee. I just want it strong, strong, like robust, dark black coffee. So I'm with you.
It's it's a
I
good
like,
analogy for life. Sometimes the good things are a little bit bitter to start off with. You just stick with it and you start to find love.
oh, that's perfect. I think we need to end there because that was amazing. So, Boo, thank you again so much. I know you're such a busy guy and really appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
Thanks, Colin. Pleasure. Thanks for having me.